So I am here right now with Dr. Clay Gish to talk a little bit more about Queen Christina. Dr. Clay, thank you so much for joining us today. By the time people see this, they will have just seen Queen Christina. So welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Sure. So before we start talking about Queen Christina, could you maybe tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, I'm an historian. I will say that my specialty is American history, not European. But you end up knowing a bit about a lot of the history of the world as part of your studies. So I know a bit about Christina. So some of it too is just that um, as a ruler, she has always sort of interested me.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so very much. So yeah, just let's just get right into it. Who was Queen Christina of Sweden and what made her reign so unconventional for her time, if that's what you believe?
Okay. Well, she was a 17th century queen. Her father, she was the only heir. Other children that her father and mother had died. So they were excited that she was finally, they had a live birth. He loved her, and he said that she should be raised as a king, taught. That meant educated in a way that women often weren't in this time period. So he gathered scholars to teach her. At this point, there was huge battles going on between Protestants and Catholics. This is the era of the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation. And he ended up dying in battle in Germany. So she became a queen. Well, at least the she would become queen as soon as she reached her 18. But she was the heir apparent, and her father had put in place regents in case anything happened to him to sort of rule while she was a child. Um, and so she wasn't even 6 years old when he died. And apparently was a very willful, stubborn kid, and but very, very smart and wanted to be part of things. So at 14, she really started becoming part of the whole negotiations for her country. But 30 years of war, the country was deeply in debt. And so one of the things that amazed me about her as a ruler um, was that she saw that, all this long, long era of war had just depleted the country's treasury. And she argued for peace um, against all of the people, the regents who had been sort of running the country, and was able to get peace for the first time in their, 30 years of their country. So I've always thought that was pretty terrific.
That's so very interesting. And now, just kind of going further into her life, could you maybe talk about the perception of Queen Christina during her lifetime, or maybe a little bit more about her decision to abdicate the throne?
Sure. She was constantly pushed by all the counselors, the rest of the government of Sweden to marry and produce an heir. That was how they wanted to secure their kingdom. And she didn't want to be. She um, looked at the example of Queen Elizabeth I of England and kind of modeled herself after that she did not want to share power with a man. And instead, she wanted to make Sweden, Stockholm, particularly where she was, the Athens of the North. meaning that she invited scholars from all over the world to come there. She herself was really interested in philosophy and the arts, and um, so she drew them all there, and she studied philosophy under Descartes, and she had invited him there. Um, and because she dressed as a man a lot, they called her the Girl King sometimes. And she was just very independent and wanted to remain that way. And there's always been like, why did she abdicate? Um, I mean, she reigned for about 25 years, I think, and then she abdicated. And it was like, it was that pressure, that constant pressure, I think. And she had she converted to Catholicism, and her country was Protestant, and her father had fought to preserve it being Protestant. Uh, I don't think it was because she was religious. She wasn't in the traditional sense. I think she just did not like the Protestant way of being. She just felt it was hypocritical. And in her own writing, she actually advocated for religious tolerance. But she ended up abdicating and going to Rome. Because the Pope was so thrilled that she had converted that he invited her to come there. And then he met her and found out that, well, she wasn't religious. In fact, he said that she was a queen without a realm, a a Catholic without faith, and a woman without shame. So I think that he just hadn't expected anybody quite like her. But she wanted to be free to do studies, to meet um, other scholars, and to be independent and not have anybody telling her what to do. But I do think she later regretted giving up the throne, because she tried through secret meetings to get the throne of first Naples, which at this point Italy was independent states, and then of Poland. And neither turned out to be successful. But I think she missed the royal life and being able to tell people what to do, and um, but mostly to rule her own life with nobody telling her what she could or could not do. And to me, that was like her burning thing, to um, be a patron of the arts. And the very first opera house in Rome was at her, she helped get it built. So she really was quite the patron.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's so fascinating. Thank you so much. So, yeah, you're talking about how she in her presentation, you're calling her in her gender presentation, I should say, and
Mhm.
how this presentation definitely fascinated historians and filmmakers alike. That's you kind of see this in the film, and how behaviorally it kind of just challenged societal expectations of women in the 17th century. So kind of on that same topic, talking
Yeah.
about gender presentation, now pivoting to sexuality. Um, could you speak a little bit, if you have any knowledge, on how historians in general have interpreted Christina's relationships with men? I know there are some specifics that have been cited historically. And in your opinion, do you think it's fair to label her a queer historical figure by today's standards?
It's always kind of hard to know. I mean, she never explicitly said anything. I mean, she wrote an autobiography, but it's not very factual. Um, I think that she probably did have relationships with women, and historians have cited one woman in particular, her um, lady in waiting, one of the ladies in waiting. Um, but she didn't go with her when she left the country. So it's hard to know. My feeling is, though, chances are that they were involved, and that she was involved with other women, probably in Rome, and that's why the Pope said she was shameless. So but she didn't talk about that. And as far as relationships with men, apparently her cousin, who everybody was pushing her to marry, I think they had been a little romantic when they were both very young, and she ended up leaving the throne to him. But she didn't want to marry. She was, quite adamant. She did not want to marry anybody, at least no man, because that would have meant losing any independence whatsoever. Um, and I don't think that there were other relationships. There was rumors that she was lovers with one of the popes. My guess is he's partly gay too, and um, they were companions. So historians have a way of refuting any evidence of homosexuality, and it's I don't know. I've always found that mysterious that it's like, oh yeah, it just popped up in mid 20th century, never before, and I doubt that that's the case.
So now kind of transitioning into talking about the film, whether it's things that you have experience with the film by like maybe watching it or just in discussion of it. How do you feel the film portrays Queen Christina's life and personality? Was there anything, or is there anything at all that you're just like this is too nuanced? Or obviously they had to make a decision to make the film happen, but this isn't necessarily correct, or maybe this is dramatized in a way that isn't correct.
Um, the film, I watched it recently, after I started talking with you all, and it's because I saw it a long time ago. So I watched it again, and I was actually really impressed with Greta Garbo's her presentation of the Queen. I felt like she had captured something of this woman who was wanted peace, wanted independence, and went traipsing off Europe dressed as a man, which Christina did do. But that whole thing about the affair with the Spanish man, that did not happen. It just like that's pure Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you for that as well. So, I think another reason why, so for further context and for anyone watching this, I'll probably will have said this at the screening, but we have three curators for the Lehigh Valley LGBTQ plus film series. You know, Kathy, there's also Adriana and myself, and we try
Yeah.
to alternate selections, like picks for the film that we want to screen. And I actually chose this one. And it was because I was scrolling through Instagram and there was a scene, and I spoiler afterwards, everyone has seen it. It was the kiss,
Mhm.
and it was the caption in the comments were not just a commentary on Queen Christina and her relationships and sexuality and gender presentation and identity, but it was also about Greta Garbo. So this idea of how she was able to, her portrayal was able to contextualize this queer representation in 1930s Hollywood was super
Right.
interesting to me. So that was a big reason why I was like, I would like to show this film. So thank you for that. And there's so much I'm sure we could say about Greta Garbo as well, but kind of applying this to today, 2025, I keep saying it's 2024. Do you think there are any lessons that we can draw from Queen Christina's life and choices, specifically around autonomy, gender identity, and societal expectations?
Um, Certainly. I think that it's unfortunate that to be her own person, that she had to uh, give up the throne. Uh, I'm I I think it really became a choice of herself or her country, and she chose herself. Um, I think women end up in that kind of position. I think gay people end up in that kind of position way too often.
If Queen Christina was alive today, how do you think she would navigate the modern world? Do you think she would still stand out as a sort of trailblazer?
In some ways, she would still be a trailblazer. She was probably the most educated woman in all of Europe um, during her lifetime. And she was so well educated that she would still stand out in that regard. Um, she was quite brilliant and, I mean, fiercely independent. And I think those are qualities that we can still admire. I would hope, though, that she would find a better way to remain in public life. I've always found her fascinating. Um, it would be interesting to know more about her. She left a lot of philosophical works, but not a lot of really personal anecdotes. She did not share her life with those around her, other than a few very private friends who left no record either. Um, it would be nice to know. I've often wished I could go back in time and learn more about the people that I've found interesting. But I think she kept her secrets close to her heart, and there's not going to be a way to find more of them.
Sure, absolutely. I definitely feel like Queen Christina is maybe one of the people on my list when people ask if you can invite anyone living or dead to dinner. I think she's definitely on that list just to kind of maybe pick her brain or just to see what that is
Mhm.
like, just having that type of interaction
Right.
with her. But okay, and then final question, is there
Mhm.
anything else to share about Queen Christina with the folks who have just seen this film or anything else that you wanted to touch on?
The only thing is, I saw a more recent film about her, which really angered me because it portrayed her as somebody who was just, I don't know, flippant and silly. And I saw it on TV at some point recently. And I was very angry, as I said, about that portrayal because I didn't feel like it captured her. So to have more recently watched Greta Garbo's version, that's why I'm saying I think she captured the spirit of the woman. And being from Sweden, I think that she understood the legacy of this woman far better than later generations. So,
All right. Well, Dr. Clay Gish, thank you so much for your time.
all right.
And this should be posted after the screening. We'll have this available online as well. So depending on however folks are engaging with this, thank you for watching. I'm going to stop recording now.
Okay.